Welcome, the anointed ones. Not everything sold is bought, and not every sacrifice delivers the reward. Think about that for a second. History is filled with stories of people who betrayed kings, nations, and even their own bloodline for a bag of coins. But here's the twist. Most of them ended up with less than they bargained for. In fact, statistics show that sudden wealth gained through betrayal is often lost faster than honest wealth. Why? Because money gained through destruction always carries a curse. Now let's bring it closer. You, chosen one, were placed on the altar. They thought sacrificing you would be the golden ticket to their breakthrough, the jackpot that would finally make life bend in their favor. They cashed in your name, your peace, your destiny, as if the universe had a pawn shop. They even whispered your life like a trade deal in the shadows, thinking nobody would notice. But here's where it gets funny. Like the villain in a movie who sells their soul only to end up broke, wrinkled, and still bitter. Their deal didn't even go through. They betrayed you, and yet the bag still slipped through their fingers. Suspenseful, isn't it? Because what they didn't know is this. You cannot profit from a soul God has stamped as untouchable. They sacrificed you for money, but in the end they lost both, you and the money. And the irony? The very attempt to bury you became the shovel that dug their own grave. This isn't just betrayal, it's exposure. It's proof that no amount of ritual, greed, or manipulation can alter what heaven has already sealed. Stay with me, because once you see how this all unfolded, you'll realize their greatest failure was thinking you were for sale in the first place. Number one, they exchanged your humanity for currency, but lost their own soul. They exchanged your humanity for currency, but in doing so, they lost their own soul. That is the brutal truth. When people betray someone like you, it's never just about money. It's about a deep hunger inside them that money will never be able to satisfy. They thought stripping you of dignity, throwing your name in the dirt, and reducing your life to a price tag would make them powerful. But what really happened is that they hollowed themselves out. They chipped away at their own humanity until all that was left was a shell of greed walking around with nothing real inside. It's not just betrayal, it's self-destruction. The moment they decided your worth could be exchanged for profit, they revealed what was really missing in them. Because money has a way of magnifying who a person already is. In your case, they thought taking from you would fill the void inside them. They believed you were disposable, just a step on the ladder to their own glory. But here's the irony. While they thought they were climbing, they were actually falling. Every lie, every deal, every plot against you was another part of themselves they sold off. And there's no buyback for a lost soul. What makes it even more tragic is that they didn't even get what they wanted. They had a number in their head. A reward they were sure would come from betraying you. But all they got was emptiness. They might have touched money, yes, but money without peace turns into poison. They might have gained influence for a moment, but influence without integrity collapses like dust. What they were really chasing was fulfillment. And fulfillment cannot be purchased at the expense of another's destiny. In betraying you, they thought they had taken everything. But you're still here. You're still breathing, still walking, still carrying what they couldn't touch, the essence of who you are. They thought they were buying power, but they only bought exposure of their own emptiness. And the more they tried to sell pieces of you, the more they revealed that the only thing truly for sale was themselves. That is the twisted irony. They reduced you to a transaction, but in the end, they became the receipt, proof of their own emptiness, proof that greed never wins. They didn't just lose you, they lost themselves. Number two, they gambled with your life, but the dealer was God. They gambled with your life, but the dealer was God. That's where everything backfired for them. They thought your destiny was a deck of cards in their hands, something they could shuffle, deal, and stack to their advantage. They moved like players who believed the outcome was already fixed in their favor. But destiny doesn't answer to human greed. It answers to divine authority. And the moment they placed their bets against you, they stepped into a game where the house always wins and the house belongs to God. They risked everything on the idea that you were powerless. They thought if they played their cards right, lies, deception, betrayal, sacrifice, they could control how your story ended. They were sure they had the upper hand because to them, money and influence always control the board. But what they didn't realize is that God was the one holding the final card. And when God deals, he doesn't play by human rules. He makes their winning hand look like a losing one in an instant. Every move they made against you was really a move against themselves. They gambled their integrity. They gambled their peace of mind. They gambled their very future, thinking that sabotaging yours would give them leverage. But that's not how divine justice works. In a gamble, there's always risk, but they were blind to the fact that the greatest risk wasn't losing you. It was losing themselves. The moment they staked your life as their bet, they handed over their own stability as collateral, and God collected. The irony is that gamblers are always confident before they lose. They sit with smiles, boasting about the hand they're holding. But when the table turns, the same pride becomes humiliation. That's exactly what happened to those who tried to gamble with your destiny. They thought it was entertainment, a sure win, a shortcut to wealth and power. Instead, their so-called victory became a public loss. What they didn't know is that your life was never theirs to play with. You are not a card in anyone's deck. You are a divine assignment. And whoever tries to gamble with that will always discover the same truth. No matter how much they bet against you, God already rigged the table in your favor. Number 3, their sacrifice created a debt they can't repay. They thought betraying you would be a one-time transaction, a quick payday with no consequences. But betrayal isn't free. It comes with a debt, and the debt always outlives the reward. They convinced themselves that sacrificing you was a shortcut to success, that the cost would never catch up with them. What they didn't realize is that every betrayal writes an invoice, and life has a way of collecting payment with interest. The same act they believed would elevate them became the very weight pulling them down. That's the hidden law they ignored. You can't destroy someone chosen by God without owing something back to the universe. They thought they were clever, outsmarting everyone, using your name, your energy, and your life as currency. But currency without backing is counterfeit, and counterfeit always gets exposed. The very moment they sold you out, they bought chains for themselves, chains of paranoia, guilt, and constant fear of being found out. They didn't just trade you for money, they traded their peace, their credibility, and their future for temporary gain. The debt they carry isn't measured in dollars. It shows up in restless nights, in doors that won't open no matter how much they push, in relationships that collapse for no reason, in opportunities that slip through their hands like sand. They tried to profit off your downfall, but the profit was cursed from the start. It looks like money in the bank, but it spends like ashes. Nothing they gained holds its value because it was purchased with the destruction of someone who was never theirs to sell. And here's the cruel twist. They can't repay this debt. It doesn't matter how many deals they make, how many new schemes they try, how many people they try to manipulate. The cost of sacrificing someone like you isn't something money can cover. It's written in a spiritual ledger, and no human hand can erase it. The very thing they thought would enrich them has bankrupted them in ways they can't fix. That's why their lives look like they're stuck on repeat. They gain, they lose, they circle the same cycle of emptiness. Because when you sacrifice the chosen for profit, you don't just fail, you sign yourself into lifelong debt. And the worst part is the creditor isn't you, the creditor is God, and he always collects. Number 4. They fed on you, thinking you were disposable, but you were indestructible. They treated you like a disposable resource, as if your worth could be emptied and tossed aside once they had drained what they wanted. They circled around you like predators, believing they could strip you of energy, joy, opportunities, and peace, and that you would eventually run dry. But what they didn't count on is that you were never powered by them in the first place. Your strength was never tied to their validation, their presence, or their approval. It was anchored in something eternal. And that is why every attempt to drain you only exposed how indestructible you really are. They thought breaking you would be the end of you. But some people only multiply when pressure is applied. Every setback they forced on you, every tear they wanted you to cry, every betrayal they thought would finish you, these things became seeds planted in the ground of your destiny. Instead of withering, you grew deeper roots. Instead of collapsing, you developed a resilience so unshakable that even you didn't know you carried it. They expected destruction. What they triggered was transformation. There is a certain irony in how life works. Those who try to consume you end up fueling the very power they hope to extinguish. By underestimating you, they became unwilling contributors to your rise. Every attempt to bleed you of hope built an even stronger determination within you. Every shadow they tried to cast over you only made your light more visible. They fed off you, but instead of making you weaker, they exposed the fact that you are sustained by a source they cannot touch. The truth is, disposable things crumble under pressure. They fade, they break, they vanish, but chosen ones don't. What they couldn't understand is that being buried isn't the same as being gone. When life buries the indestructible, it doesn't kill it, it plants it. And that's what you are. Planted, not destroyed. They miscalculated badly. What they thought was consumption turned out to be contribution. They believed they had taken everything from you, but in reality, they only sharpened, strengthened, and expanded you. They proved something they never intended to prove. That you cannot be erased, because your existence was never built on their approval. You were indestructible all along, and now they have to live with the proof. Number 5. They expected blood money to silence you, but it amplified you. They believed that sacrificing you would end your influence, erase your name, and silence your voice forever. Blood money has always carried that illusion, the idea that if they pay the price to bury someone, the world will never hear from them again. But what they failed to realize is that silence isn't bought with betrayal, and a chosen one cannot be muted by schemes. Their attempt to eliminate you had the opposite effect. Instead of vanishing, your presence grew louder. Instead of erasing you, they highlighted you. Instead of silencing you, they accidentally turned you into a voice that cannot be ignored. The more they tried to suppress your story, the more it spread. The very act of targeting you became evidence that you mattered. They didn't see it coming, but betrayal has a way of leaving fingerprints, and those fingerprints point back to you, not as a victim, but as proof of resilience. They made you unforgettable. People now ask why you were targeted, why they feared you so much, why so much effort was put into silencing you. And the answers to those questions only amplify who you are. They expected blood money to erase your existence, but instead it became a megaphone for it. They funded your testimony without realizing it. Every plot, every attempt to destroy your credibility, every ritual they believed would wipe you out, it all became material for your story. They made you the headline when they thought they were erasing your name. They became your advertisers while trying to be your assassins. And the most haunting part for them is this. Once a voice like yours has been amplified, it can never be contained again. You became the echo that haunts their silence, the truth that interrupts their lies, the light that slips through every crack they tried to seal. They can't mute you because your voice doesn't come from them. It comes from a place beyond their reach. Their plan failed because you don't silence chosen ones with betrayal. You amplify them. They tried to bury your sound, but what they didn't know is that your voice carries like thunder. The harder they tried to quiet it, the louder it became. Now your very existence speaks, and no amount of blood money can drown it out. Number 6. They couldn't buy the spirit that dwells within you. They moved with the arrogance of people who think money can buy anything. To them, everything has a price tag: loyalty, love, influence, even life itself. They assumed that by sacrificing you, They could purchase control over your destiny, as if your spirit was another item on their shopping list. But they made the gravest mistake, confusing material wealth with spiritual power. Money can buy lies. It can buy crowds. It can buy the illusion of strength. But it cannot buy the divine spark that lives within you. That spark is untouchable, and the moment they came for it, their empire of greed began to rot from the inside. They thought they owned you once they exchanged you for profit. But ownership of the chosen cannot be transferred. It was never in their hands to begin with. What dwells in you doesn't belong to man, it belongs to God. And that makes you the one thing money will never be able to manipulate. They could steal your possessions, block your opportunities, even tarnish your reputation for a season, but they could not purchase or extinguish what gives you life. This is why everything they built on the back of betraying you eventually crumbles. They can buy comfort, but they can't buy peace. They can buy recognition, but they can't buy respect. They can buy silence from some people, but they can't buy silence from the truth. Without that spirit inside, all they have is emptiness dressed up as power. They hold money in their hands, but they feel poorer than ever. That's the difference they never understood. Material gain fades, but the spiritual spark endures. The money they gained in exchange for you started to slip through their fingers because anything built on selling out the chosen is cursed to collapse. Meanwhile, you remain, carrying what can't be purchased, broken, or duplicated. They couldn't buy your spirit because your value was never for sale. And now, their own hunger for control has left them with nothing but dust, where their empire once stood. That is the cost of greed. When you try to buy what God has placed in someone, you don't just fail, you lose everything you thought you gained. Number 7. Their rituals worked against themselves. They went into their rituals with confidence, believing that placing you on their altar would unlock power, wealth, or influence for themselves. In their minds, you were just a pawn, a sacrifice to fuel their ambitions. But here's what they didn't understand. You cannot curse what has already been consecrated by God. Every act they performed, every dark intention they released, every word they spoke in hidden places, it didn't land on you. It circled back to them, stronger than before. Instead of blessings, their rituals became weapons turned against their own hands. What they thought would destroy you became the very thing that began to eat away at them. They didn't expect resistance because they underestimated the power covering your life. To them, rituals were guaranteed exchanges. Give blood, get power. But life doesn't work that way when it comes to chosen ones. What they offered on the altar became evidence against them. The smoke didn't rise as an offering. It clung to them as a curse. They expected to walk away with more, but they left with less. Their health began to falter. Their relationships collapsed. Their minds became restless. That wasn't random. It was the reversal. They planted destruction. But the soil they used was their own lives, so it grew right back at their feet. They were so eager to see you break that they never noticed the cracks forming in their own foundation. The most haunting part is that they can't undo what they did. Once a ritual is released, the energy has to find somewhere to go. But because you were covered, it bounced off you and found its way back to the source. They became haunted by their own work. They became victims of their own sacrifice. And no matter how much they try to cleanse it, cover it, or explain it away, they can't escape the consequences. You weren't destroyed. They were. What was meant to bury you became their self-destruction. What was meant to silence you became the loudest evidence of their corruption. Their own rituals exposed them for what they truly are, architects of their own downfall. And the irony is, the only reason they fell so hard is because they tried to rise by putting you on an altar that was never theirs to touch. Number 8. They didn't realize you were the test, not the target. They looked at you and saw an easy target. In their eyes, you were vulnerable, isolated, and valuable enough to exploit. They thought their role was to overpower you, to take advantage of your position, and to profit from your existence. But what they didn't realize is that you were never the target. You were the test. Life placed you in their path not so they could destroy you, but so they could reveal who they really are. How they handled you was going to expose their true character, and when the moment came, they failed miserably. By choosing greed over integrity, they revealed their corruption to heaven itself. They could have chosen compassion, honor, or protection. They could have chosen loyalty instead of betrayal. But they saw you as currency, and in that decision, they didn't just trade you. They traded their own future. Every action they took against you was being recorded, not just in the eyes of people, but in the realm where nothing is hidden. They thought nobody would know, but the truth is, their choices shouted louder than words. This is why their downfall was inevitable. Tests are designed to measure what's inside, and when pressed with the opportunity, they showed nothing but greed, envy, and selfishness. It wasn't about what they gained from sacrificing you. It was about what they lost by revealing themselves as unworthy of the position they thought they deserved. In trying to strip you of value, they exposed their own lack of it. What makes this so powerful is that while they thought the focus was on you, heaven's eyes were actually on them. You weren't the one on trial. They were. You weren't the one being weighed. They were. And when the scales tipped, they were found lacking. That's why their schemes eventually collapsed. That's why nothing they gained ever satisfied them. Because they failed the very test that determined their future. They thought you were the victim, but in truth, you were the mirror. You reflected back their hidden greed, their desperation, and their lack of integrity. And because they failed to treat you with the reverence a chosen one deserves, they sealed their own downfall. What they thought was their victory was really just their exposure. They didn't break you. They revealed themselves. Number 9, they wanted profit but received exposure. They went into it thinking they would come out richer. They believed that using your name, your energy, and your downfall as leverage would give them the kind of profit they were chasing. In their minds, your pain was their ticket, your loss was their gain, and your silence was their guarantee. But what actually happened was the exact opposite of what they expected. Instead of gaining profit, they gained exposure. Their actions pulled the mask off and showed the world, the spirit realm, and even their closest allies who they really are. People driven not by vision, not by love, not by loyalty, but by pure greed. Exposure is worse than loss. Loss can be replaced. Money can be earned again. Opportunities can reappear. But once your true nature is revealed, there's no going back. And that's what their betrayal did. It marked them. Their name no longer carries the weight they hoped to build with stolen gain, because everyone now knows that their success was born out of treachery. Even the people who once applauded them now watch carefully, because betrayal is contagious. If they could do it to you, what's to stop them from doing it again to others? This is the curse of exposure. It destroys trust. And once trust is gone, all the wealth in the world becomes irrelevant. They may have touched money from their betrayal, but that money couldn't silence the whispers, the suspicions, and the undeniable evidence that followed. The story of their actions became louder than the currency they received. What they thought would buy them power actually bought them a reputation they can never shake. And here's the irony. The very profit they thought they secured has no real use, because reputation is the true currency in this world. Without it, wealth is nothing but paper. Without it, influence collapses, doors shut, and alliances dissolve. They wanted to walk away with more, but they ended up being stripped of the one thing no one can afford to lose: credibility. Their betrayal didn't make you vanish. It made them visible. It didn't erase you. It exposed them. They became the headline, the example, the cautionary tale of how greed never prospers for long. And while they were busy chasing profit, they never saw that the real price they would pay was their reputation, forever stained, forever remembered. Number 10. They miscalculated the value of your destiny. They treated your destiny like it was something that could be traded, flipped, or exchanged for their own benefit. To them, you were like cheap goods on a shelf, something to bargain with, something they could undervalue and still walk away with a profit. But what they failed to see is that you were not ordinary merchandise. You were divine property. Your life, your path, your purpose were stamped with God's signature, which means no human hand had the authority to put a price tag on you. The moment they tried, they miscalculated in the worst way possible. Your destiny isn't measured in bills or coins. It's measured in what it produces beyond you. It's measured in the lives you're meant to impact, the generations you're meant to influence, the chains you're meant to break, and the doors you're meant to open. They thought they were dealing with something small and temporary, but in reality, they were handling something eternal. And when you undervalue the eternal, you end up paying a price far greater than the one you thought you'd gain. This is why their schemes never prospered. They tried to make a quick trade, but how do you profit from something that cannot be sold? It's like trying to pawn off the sun. You can't own it, you can't sell it, and you can't contain its value. The attempt itself becomes evidence of ignorance. In the same way, their attempt to devalue your destiny didn't shrink it. It only revealed how small their vision really was. The universe, and more importantly, the creator of that universe, always collects on miscalculations like that. They thought you were worth little, but the bill came back multiplied against them. They thought betraying you would enrich them, but it only impoverished them in ways they couldn't predict. Closed doors, broken peace, constant losses, and a reputation they can't recover from. They mispriced you, and the penalty was steep. Because chosen ones are not measured by temporary gain, they are measured by eternal impact. To reduce you to coins and contracts was to declare war on heaven's blueprint for your life, and heaven always defends its own. That's why you're still standing, and that's why they're still paying. They tried to put a cheap price on something priceless, and the universe charged them the balance, with interest. Number 11. They became prisoners of the currency they worshipped. They believed money would be their ticket to freedom. In their minds, sacrificing you was the key to unlocking a life without limits, a life where power and comfort would erase the emptiness they carried inside. But what actually happened was the opposite. Instead of freeing them, the money they gained became their prison. Every bill, every coin, every possession tied to their betrayal is a reminder of the cost of their corruption. They can't spend it without remembering how they got it, and they can't enjoy it without fearing it will be snatched away. That's the trap of currency worship. It never satisfies, it only demands more. The very thing they thought would make them untouchable now keeps them awake at night. They walk around paranoid, worried about exposure, worried about being betrayed the same way they betrayed you, worried about the foundation of their life crumbling beneath them. That's not freedom, that's captivity. And it's a captivity of their own making. Money cannot heal betrayal. It magnifies it. Instead of numbing their conscience, it haunts them. It turns their possessions into ghosts. The car they drive, the house they live in, the clothes they wear, each one whispers the truth they try to silence, that they traded integrity for greed, that they sold someone who could never truly be erased. Every time they touch what they gained, they are reminded of you, because your essence is the unshakable proof of what they failed to destroy. And the worst part is, their hunger never ends. They thought this betrayal would be the final deal, the one that set them for life. But greed doesn't work that way. It doesn't satisfy, it multiplies. What was once enough becomes too little, and the cycle repeats itself. Now they're prisoners to the very thing they worshipped, forever chasing, forever empty, forever haunted. The irony is sharp. They sacrificed you believing money would secure their future. But instead, money became the bars of their cell. They thought they bought freedom, but they purchased chains. And while they live bound by paranoia and endless hunger, you remain untouchable because what fuels you can't be bought or sold. They are trapped by the currency of this world. while you continue to move in the freedom of a destiny that no amount of money can buy. Number 12, they were willing to kill for bread, but you were meant to multiply it. Their willingness to sacrifice you over scraps revealed just how limited their vision really was. To them, survival meant clawing for bread, fighting for crumbs, and snatching whatever they could from whoever looked vulnerable. They were so desperate for quick gain that they were willing to kill for it, willing to destroy someone chosen just to feel like they had secured a temporary advantage. But that very desperation exposed the truth. They were thinking small, operating from lack, while you were destined to operate from abundance. What they couldn't see is that bread is not the end goal for a chosen one. You weren't created just to eat, you were created to multiply. You carry within you the kind of power that takes nothing and produces something that transforms scarcity into overflow, that feeds more than just yourself. Where they were begging for crumbs, you were built to provide for nations. Where they were scrambling for scraps, you were being prepared to open storehouses. They thought you were competition for survival, but you were actually the solution to hunger itself. This is the irony. They destroyed what was meant to sustain them. In trying to take bread from you, they cut themselves off from the oven it was coming from. You were not just carrying provision for yourself, you were carrying provision that extended far beyond what they could imagine. And instead of honoring that, instead of connecting to it, they tried to eliminate it. Their small vision couldn't comprehend your greater purpose. That's the tragedy of greed. It makes people blind. They were so focused on crumbs they couldn't see the bakery standing right in front of them. They were so focused on today's hunger that they couldn't see tomorrow's abundance. They were so focused on taking that they missed the truth that you were destined to give. And this is why their schemes could never prosper. Bread gained through betrayal always rots quickly, while bread multiplied through divine purpose never runs out. They were willing to kill for a slice, but you were anointed to distribute loaves. They thought destroying you would feed them, but all it did was expose the emptiness of their vision. Meanwhile, your destiny remains, designed not for crumbs, but for nations. Number 13. Their sacrifice didn't break you, it validated you. The truth about their attempt to sacrifice you is this: it didn't break you, it validated you. The very fact that you were singled out, targeted, and placed on their altar is the loudest evidence that you carry a weight they couldn't handle. Nobody sacrifices the ordinary. Nobody wastes energy plotting against something empty. A farmer doesn't burn barren fields. They burn the ones fertile enough to grow something valuable. Their attack against you wasn't a reflection of your weakness. It was confirmation of your worth. They thought their betrayal was the final blow that would erase you from relevance. But what they didn't realize is that their very obsession with you exposed the truth they were trying to hide. You are not ordinary. You were never just another person to them. You carried power they wanted to tap into, and when they couldn't control it, they tried to eliminate it. That's not weakness. That's validation that you are chosen. In their attempt to strip you down, they revealed what heaven had already dressed you with. If you had been irrelevant, they would have ignored you, but instead they schemed, plotted, and spent resources against you. That tells you all you need to know. Their sacrifices were never about destroying nothing. They were about trying to break something too significant for them to handle. And when you survived, when you stood tall despite everything they did, the validation became undeniable, not just to you but to everyone watching. The irony is, in attempting to break you, they broke their own credibility. In trying to erase your name, they engraved it deeper. The smoke of their sacrifice rose as proof, not of your defeat, but of your divine appointment. What they intended for ruin became your evidence. What they intended for silence became your amplification. And that's why you can stand today knowing this. You weren't broken, you were proven. You weren't erased, you were established. The sacrifice they thought would end you was the very act that exposed who you really are. Chosen, powerful, and untouchable in the ways that truly matter. Their attack didn't invalidate your destiny. It confirmed it beyond question. Number 14. What they wanted died in their hands, but what you carry still lives. What they wanted died in their hands, but what you carry still lives. That's the brutal reality they cannot escape. Everything they sold you out for, money, influence, approval, alliances, has either already crumbled or is slipping faster than they can grip it. Their hands are stained with betrayal, but also empty, because nothing they chased had lasting substance. Greed makes people blind, and in their blindness they thought temporary gain could outweigh eternal purpose. The result? Their so-called blessings rotted in their possession, while the very life they tried to extinguish continues to grow stronger. This is the great irony of spiritual laws. They can sacrifice, scheme, and conspire all they want, but if what you carry is divine, it cannot be transferred, purchased, or destroyed. Their power moves disintegrated the moment they touch them, because they were never designed to sustain their kind of spirit. They wanted wealth, but it slipped away. They wanted to be remembered, but they are already forgotten. They wanted control, but now they live paranoid, consumed by fear that their own hands will expose them. What they wanted died with them because it was built on deception, and deception cannot outlive truth. Meanwhile, you remain. What you carry still thrives, not because you fought harder than them in human terms, but because your purpose is untouchable. You were entrusted with something that does not rot, something that cannot be converted into paper or coins. It grows through betrayal, multiplies through pain, and strengthens through opposition. Every attempt to destroy you has only watered it. Every loss you endured made it flourish even more. And this is what eats them alive. They risked everything, thinking your fall was their jackpot, yet they ended up with nothing. The story is flipped. Their sacrifice exposed their own emptiness, while your survival confirmed your abundance. They're left with dust in their hands, while you still carry fire in your spirit. What they wanted perished, but what you hold is eternal. That is why you stand as living proof that destiny cannot be sold, stolen, or silenced. It can only be fulfilled, no matter who tries to bury it. In the end, everything they tried to do to you, every betrayal, every scheme, every attempt to sacrifice your life for greed, failed. They thought they could silence you, manipulate you, and reduce your worth to coins and profit. But the truth is far greater than anything they could touch. Every act of betrayal they committed became evidence of their own emptiness. Every attempt to destroy you amplified your strength, and every ritual they performed against you turned back to expose their corruption. They gambled with your life, miscalculated your value, and worshipped currency over integrity, only to discover that what they sought could never be theirs to claim. You weren't broken by their hands. You were validated. You weren't silenced. You were amplified. You weren't destroyed. You were proven. They became prisoners of their own greed while you remained untouchable, carrying within you a power that cannot be bought, sold, or stolen. What they wanted died in their hands, but what you carry continues to thrive, unstoppable and unshakable. Every failure of theirs is a testament to your indestructible spirit, every misstep a mirror reflecting the magnitude of your divine destiny. This is the ultimate truth. Betrayal cannot erase purpose, greed cannot override destiny, and schemes built on fear and envy always collapse under their own weight. They tried to bury you, but all they did was water the roots of your legacy. They sacrificed you for what they thought was gain, but the universe had already secured your rise. You are the living proof that chosen ones are never disposable, that divine purpose cannot be undermined, and that no hand on earth can touch what heaven has already marked. Stand tall, knowing that every attempt to break you has instead confirmed your eternal worth. They failed, but you remain. And what remains cannot be bought, cannot be stolen, and cannot be silenced. You are unstoppable. If this message resonated with you, don't just watch, take action. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a powerful truth like this. Smash the like button to show your support. Comment below and share your thoughts or experiences, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Your engagement fuels the channel and spreads these revelations to those who are ready to awaken. Stay connected, stay powerful, and keep rising, because your destiny cannot be stopped. God bless you.